Next on Face the State, from a grim economic picture of our state to requiring seatbelts in the back seat. These are busy times at the state capitol. Plus, should Connecticut make a play for Delta, and the battle over the governor's nominee to be Chief Justice of the state Supreme Court. We will discuss with State Senator Bob Duff. Also, Republican candidate for governor Tim Herbst. He wants a smaller field of opponents, so who does he think should drop out? There are very few women among those gubernatorial wannabes. Why is that? We'll discuss with authors Susan Campbell and Russell Blair of the Hartford Courant. Our flashback, the WFSB team that included Mika Brzezinski covering the storm of the century 25 years ago this week. It's all straight ahead this Sunday morning, March 11th, 2018.
From Eyewitness News, Connecticut's most watched local political program, this is Face the State.
Good morning and thanks for joining us. I'm Dennis House. These are busy times at the state capitol, everything from seatbelts to Halloween to a Supreme Court justice. And with us today to talk about all of this and more is the Majority Leader from the State Senate, Senator Bob Duff, Democrat, representing Norwalk and Darien. And Senator, good to see you on the program.
Great, thanks for having me.
I want to ask you, first of all, you tweeted last week, and I ended up retweeting it, and it kind of went viral in a sense, and I'm just curious why. You said that Delta Airlines should move its bases, its headquarters, to Connecticut, presumably Bradley Airport, because of the way that the NRA was treating them in Atlanta. Tell us about that.
Yeah, thank you. It was kind of amazing. It did go viral, and I think for a good reason. What you had happen in Georgia was the current lieutenant governor and candidate for governor said that he would do everything in his power to make sure that Delta never benefited from any kind of state policies because of the fact that the NRA rightly so, because Delta rightly so cut ties with the NRA after the Parkland shooting. And so I said, hey, look, if Georgia is going to treat their employee like that, a business that has 33,000 employees there, then maybe we should welcome them to Connecticut. They have 33,000 employees in Georgia. Let's bring them here to Connecticut.
Will the state realistically go after them? Are you going to spearhead that effort?
Well, we're sending them a letter. I think the governor has sent them a letter too. And you never know. Maybe they don't move here. Maybe they move a division here. Maybe they consider Connecticut. I mean, we do share their values together. We share the same kind of gun control values that they do. The same values of making sure that we lower gun crime and gun deaths. And if Georgia's going to stand with the NRA, we'll certainly be happy to stand with Delta.
Certainly the members of this new economic commission would be thrilled if Delta was moving here. The Commission on Fiscal Stability and Economic Growth, it's got a catchy name, doesn't it? What did you think of their recommendations? Because it did paint a pretty grim picture of the situation here in Connecticut.
Well, we're still looking at that report. It's a lot to digest and a lot to look at. They certainly worked very, very hard in a very short amount of time. I think there were folks from all walks of life in there. And the fact of the matter is that one of the things they determined was Connecticut does not have high corporate taxes, unlike what many people say, the Rooting for Failure Club, as I call them, talk about when they say how Connecticut is a bad place for business. They've determined, and many of them were business people themselves, that Connecticut does not have high business taxes. However, we can make some changes, and we can make changes on a personal level, on a business level, on the corporate level, and we know that we need to make these kinds of changes. Not in silos, but we need to do it for the growth and the well-being of the state of Connecticut over the long term.
They called for tax hikes and $1 billion in cuts. Where would those cuts come from?
Well, I mean, I asked them that question, and they said that they believe, they were not specific either about that. They said that they believe through efficiencies and other means they could achieve those, that $1 billion cuts. Now, let's not forget, the state of Connecticut, and we as Democrats in the legislature have cut and cut and cut and cut over many, many years in our state budget. And as a matter of fact, our state workforce is 15% smaller than it was many years ago, about 7 years ago. So we have thousands and thousands of fewer state employees than we did about 7 years ago. Our biggest issue right now is long-term pension debt. Our current employees that we have right now, we're pretty much paid their pensions. But folks who were hired before 1984, that pension debt that had not been paid into for decade upon decade upon decade is really what's hanging the noose kind of hanging around our neck right now.
And this commission called for the end of collective bargaining by the year 2027. Do you support that?
Well, I think that, again, you've got to look at all these things together. You can't look at these things in silos. You know, I support collective bargaining. I certainly support the ability for people to negotiate and create a fair wage. Now, let's not forget, the whole CBAC thing, which is the State Employees Bargaining Unit, was a Republican idea to do it in one way so that it would be more efficient. You know, Republicans can't have it both ways. This is something that they came up with. But, you know, there are lots of issues in there, lots of tough things for both sides of the aisle to swallow. We'll have to continue to look at it, dig deeper, and see what we can do as to whether or not this is something that goes forward.
You say a fair wage. Should some of these retirees get pensions of upwards of $200,000?
Well, of course not. They should not. I think that makes everybody go crazy.
Is that excessive?
No, of course it is. Of course that's excessive. But again, let's remember that the average pension for a state employee is probably about $30,000 or $40,000. So again, you're talking pensions about $40,000 for people from the Department of Children and Families who go out all hours of the night because they see abused children, or folks over to DOT who have to go out at night because of who are plowing and keeping our roads safe and everything else. So we need to make sure that those kinds of pensions are a thing of the past, and I think most of those are a thing of the past. And also continue to make sure we keep control of that. But our costs, our employee costs, state employee costs, are actually going down, not up.
I want to shift to the battle over Andrew McDonald. He's the governor's choice for Chief Justice of the Supreme Court. Why do you think that Republicans are opposing him?
I think many of them don't like the fact that he's gay.
So do you think they're anti-gay?
Yes.
Who?
I don't want to say for sure, because
but some of the Republican senators you believe are anti-gay.
Yeah, nobody has come out and said that publicly, that they said that they have a problem that he's gay, but they're making up a lot of different excuses. The fact that they call him a judicial activist, and you see people in the legal community, other folks who deal with the Supreme Court, or other folks who are who are lawyers themselves, or scholars, or college professors, or others, and they dismiss all of those kinds of things. So other than that, I'm really not sure why Republicans are so hell-bent on opposing this nominee when just a few years ago, to become Associate Justice, he was overwhelmingly supported by both Democrats and Republicans. And let me just also mention that it is our tradition here in the state of Connecticut, in the legislature, to always confirm somebody, regardless of judicial philosophy, as long as that person is qualified. Andrew McDonald clearly meets the qualification issue, and there's nobody more qualified to become Chief Justice than Andrew McDonald right now. So for people to stand in the way and make up kind of phony excuses to me is embarrassing, and I think that is a page that we can never come back to if they continue to make this all about politics.
As you know, your colleague, Senator Gail Schlossberg, has recused herself from this vote, and she cited a sworn affidavit in which she said that McDonald was screaming at her, so much so that his lip was quivering. Do you believe her account?
Well, I obviously wasn't there. I've been friends with Andrew for a very long time.
Do you doubt her account?
I think at times people get emotional. It's not for me really to say whether it happened or didn't happen. Is that enough for somebody to disqualify themselves for a candidate? I'm not really sure about that. So that's a decision she has to make, obviously. But I've known Andrew for a long time. Has there times where we all get a little heated or our voices get raised? Of course. But I don't know if that would be enough to say you're going to disqualify yourself from voting for somebody.
If he were to apologize for that, do you think Republicans would come over and support him, or is that not enough?
I'm not sure that's the reason. Again, I don't know that to say that because somebody screamed at you, therefore the Republican Party is going to be against him, or they're going to be against voting for this person. I think that's a pretty weak argument.
Senator Bob Duff, Majority Leader, thank you so much for being on the program today. When we come back, we will talk about the governor's race with candidate Tim Herbst. And we welcome your comments. You can tweet me right now if I'm in Facebook or Instagram.